Start recording. Okay. So it's easy to be carried away on the exam because you might have your cell phone or stuff. Um, it's not, you're not gonna have enough time. So the best way to prepare for the exam is to study and do the test quiz online. And let me know if if you run into any problems, any questions or anything that you don't exactly sure how it works. I never had any email yet. I haven't received any email yet from anyone that had problem with Inquisitive, so that's a good thing. And yeah, so that's about your exam on Friday coming up. So make sure you be online by the computer. Make sure your laptop have fully charged. You need about, I think, 1 hour, 30 minutes to complete the exam. And if you can't take it, or if that time doesn't work, if you have a good excuse, do send me an email so we can work something out. Okay, that's all I wanted to cover for the exam. Do you guys have any questions? Anything you wanted to ask? Anything you're not sure? You can unmute, or you can leave the comment on the chat or anything. I'll look out for those. And then also for today, so one of the questions, one of the most repeated question on the exam is the independent and dependent variable questions. And I'm pretty sure that you guys received the worksheet by Dr. Berg, but I wanted to cover that. Okay, so I wanted to go over some of the scenarios that we've seen, and just going through it and trying to see what is the dependent and what is the independent variable, because that becomes handy, not just for this class, but later on for the later courses that you're going to take. Okay, let me go ahead and share my screen. And again, if there was any problem on my end, please let me know. I assume that everything works well right now. Sure. Okay. Okay, so hopefully you can see my screen. Let's see. All right. So we have 5 different scenarios, and hopefully you do have this, you had the time a little to work on this beforehand. So let's see, let's work through this. So for number 1, for each questions, for each 5 of the scenarios, we want to determine what is the dependent and what is the independent variable. And that's important for you to notice and to be fast at it. So let's cover number 1. Number 1, a researcher wants to determine if artificial food additives cause hyperactivity in mice. Young mice from 1 litter were assigned to the experimental condition, and young mice from a different litter were used to in the control condition. The control animals were fed a diet without artificial food additives. The experimental groups received a same diet but with additive. And over the course of 10 months, the researcher mentioned the activity level of the 2 groups. So what do you think the independent and dependent variable is in this condition? So there is a, let me see if I can make, if I can draw something, or if I can draw, let's see. Okay, so usually the dependent variable is something that we wanted to measure to see if it's going to be affected by our dependent variable. So what do you guys think? I just don't want to give up the answers. What do you guys think the independent variable is in this question? So we're looking for 2 things: independent and dependent variable. So the independent variable is the food additives. It could, oh, let me see. Exactly. Let me see if I can. Oh, okay. Got it. So the researcher wants to see. Oh, let me see. Can I stop this? How can I stop? Stop. Oh, cool. So the independent variable is the food additives. So this is something that we are going to add or we're going to control in our experiment to see whether the hyperactivity changes in the mice, right? So exactly. So the food additives is our independent variables. And so again, our hyperactivity, the thing that we are trying to control or to be the thing that we are trying to measure, it's going to be our dependent variable. So another thing which is not for this course, but it's a good thing. It gives you a more in-depth understanding of the scenario that you're reading. Is to find like a confound, problem, or what is the flaw, what is the problem of the experiment. So for what do you think for this experiment the main problem is? What do you think if if you were to propose this idea, what do you think one of the most important flaws of this experiment is? Let me see if I have my chat group here so I can read anyone. So what do you guys think? So is the independent variable the food additives? Yes, the independent variable is the food additives. Is a flaw that the experiment doesn't state specific measurements? It could be, but one of the most important one is that there is no random assignment in this experiment. So a good experiment, experiment is the experiment that is there is a random assignment. In this specific, research proposal or experiments, is the problem is there's no random assignments for different mice. So that's one of the flaws. Okay. So let's go over number 2. Let's see if I can erase that. I'm learning too in this session. Let me see. Annotate eraser. Do we have eraser? Clear. Clear all dry. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's go over number 2. So investigators are interested in the use of computer technology to enhance visualization to promote T cell production in children with cancer. Patients with randomly, so in this experiment, there are randomly assigned. Patients with are randomly assigned to one of the 2 conditions. Group 1 patients receive daily sessions with a hospital volunteer, playing a new computer animations program that instructs them to visualize the action of healing cells in their bodies that are aggressively fighting their cancer. Group 2 patients receive no visualization training. Before treatment begins, all patient all patients T cell levels were measured via blood test. The experiment is planned to proceed for 3 months. At the end of the experiment, T cell level will be measured again. So what do you think the independent and dependent variable is in here? So remember, the thing that we want to measure is always our dependent, and the thing that we are changing to see what we want to measure is going to change. That's our independent variable. If that made any sense. So come on, don't be shy. What is our independent and dependent variable here? So first, let's look, what is it that we want to measure? What is our dependent variable? So we are trying to test the T cell levels, right? In a cancer, in a patient's cancer. So that's most likely, this is what we want to measure. So this is, let me make some drawing just because I enjoy. So investigator are interested in use of computer technology to enhance visualization to promote T cell level T cell production. So we are trying to measure that. So that's most likely is going to be our dependent variable, right? So T cell production is going to be our dependent variable. And what is it that we are trying to do in order to measure this T cell production? So we are trying, so group 1 patients receives daily sessions with hospital volunteer. Doing what? Playing a new computer animation. So playing a new computer animation program that instructs them to visualize the action of healing cells. So this visualization is our independent variable, right? So if you read for group 2, patients receive no visualization. So the independent variable, the thing that we are trying to change throughout the experiment is this visualization. So whether in one group they visualize certain activity on a screen or on the computer, and in certain groups they don't visualize. They don't have that kind of training. So that's going to be our independent variable. So once again, the T cell production, something that we are trying to measure, that's going to be our dependent variable. And the thing that we are trying to change, the visualization action, is going to be our independent variable, which in one experiment group, they visualize, and in other experiment groups, they don't have that kind of training, right? So now let's try and answer the third questions of what is the confound variable? What is what can be done to improve the design of the experiments? Or in other words, what is the problem with these experiments? So again, if you haven't went over this worksheet, I highly recommend that you do, because it becomes handy, especially on the test, or especially for the classes that you're taking in the future. So the number one problem with this is the placebo effect, right? And what do I mean by the placebo effect is that, the volunteer that works with group 1, so they're kind of have this, they made this kind of feeling that, visualization will, you know, uh, will make a change, and so they might have this placebo effect that they have to watch out for, right? So maybe by creating a third group that they do the same thing, but without, um, maybe doing a different kind of activities, uh, can improve to see whether it can improve the production of the T cells or not. So one of the main problem is the placebo effect on this experiment. Okay, so um, let's do number 3. Um, and let me erase everything, clear all drawing. Okay. So for number 3, industrial psychologists were interested in the effect of goal setting strategies on productivity. 50 subjects participated in a 6-month study. All subjects were in the middle management position in computer-oriented firms in Silicon Valley. Subjects were randomly assigned to one of the two groups. Group 1 received weekly training sessions on goal-setting strategies. They were also asked to keep written documents to verify the goals accomplished on the weekly basis. Group 2 received no goal setting. They met with a supervisor weekly in regular scheduled staff meetings and discussed work-related problems. Supervisors were asked to document the work accomplishment of the participants weekly. At the end of the 6 month, work productivity for each of the group was assessed by both their supervisors. What do you think is the dependent and independent variable is? So once you do a bunch of these, you become kind of fast at noticing. So for example, group 1 received weekly training sessions on goal setting strategies, and group 2 received no goal setting strategies. So we know this is something that we are changing in our study or in our experiments. So we know automatically that this can be our independent variable, right? So what do you think our dependent variable is? Exactly. So dependent variable is the amount of productivity, because this is something that we are trying to measure. Again, if you read, industrial psychologists were interested in the effect of goal setting strategies on productivity. So this is what they're interested about. So this is something that they are trying to measure, so which is going to be our dependent variable. And what do you think is the confound variable? What do you think the potential problem of this study is? What do you think one of the most important flaws of this experiment is? So one of the problem in this in this experiment is the characteristics is the demand characteristics. So um, the work that was demonstrated in the subjects in one group were measured by the different manager, and the work for the different groups, people in different groups were measured by a different manager. So maybe having the same supervisor would help uh, to have a more accurate results, to see if the goal setting strategies really affect the productivity. So that's one of the potential problems uh, with this study. Okay, all right, so let's do number 4. We're almost there. Let's see. Erase. Okay. So for number 4, a researcher proposed that memory for list of nouns will be improved if each noun is associated with a set of adjectives. For example, the noun car might be remembered more often if we pair it with adjectives such as fast, rusted, rental, and etc. To test this hypothesis, subjects were presented a list of 30 nouns and were given 2 minutes to memorize the list. Following this first presentation, 15 of the 30 nouns were randomly selected and subjects were instructed to write 2 adjectives describing each noun. Right? So using a free recall test the next day, the researchers sought to determine how many of the 30 nouns could be remembered. Results showed better recall for the 15 nouns for which subjects provided descriptive adjectives than for the 15 nouns that were not paired with any adjectives, finding which supports researchers' hypothesis. So what do you think is the dependent and the independent variable is in this experiments? So again, so let's see. This thing just pops. Let me see. Okay. So researcher proposes that memory for list of nouns will be improved if each noun is associated with a set of adjectives. For example, noun might be called remembered more often than if you pair it with adjectives such as fast. So there's something to do with adjectives, right? To test this hypothesis, subjects were presented a list of 30 nouns, were assigned to 2 minutes to memorize the list. Following the first presentation, 15 of the 30 nouns were randomly selected and subjects were instructed to write 2 adjectives describing each noun. Using a free recall test the next day, the researchers sought to determine how many 30 nouns they could remember. Results showed a better recall for the 15 nouns. For which subjects provided descriptive adjectives than for the 15 nouns that were not paired with adjectives. So it has to do something with adjectives too, right? So noun, adjectives, what do you think is the independent and dependent variable? So the independent variable is going to be the associative or non-associative adjectives, right? So because they want to pair with adjectives, so they want to see if they can remember it better if they're associated or if they're not associated with adjectives. So that's going to be our independent variable. This is something that we are changing, right? And our dependent variable is going to be the number of nouns that is recalled, right? So that's going to be our dependent variable. So what do you think is the main problem for this specific experiment is? So the main problem with this experiment is that there was more exposure to the words paired with adjectives, right? A gift from Zoom, running out of time. Okay. Okay. Let's see, how do I get rid of this? Okay, go away. All right. So again, with so more exposure to the words paired with adjectives. So that's one of the more confound problem with this experiment. Okay. So let's do the last one, number 5. A researcher proposed that fully functioning frontal lobes are necessary for spatial memory. In order to test this hypothesis, water-deprived rats were trained to run through the complex maze in order to receive access to the water. After 20 days of training, 5 of the 10 animals were anesthetized and underwent a surgical procedure, which involved boring a hole in the skull and making a small lesion in both frontal lobes. The next day, following 12 hours of water deprived, all 10 rats were tested. Results showed that the time to reach the end of the maze was about 5 times greater than for rats with frontal lobes lesion than for the rats in the control condition. The researcher concluded that the frontal lobe lesions disrupt spatial memory. So what do you think is the dependent and independent variable is for this one? This one is not that complex. So it's, you know what they are trying to study, and we know what is it that they're changing. So, so if we read it again, and let's make notes as we go. So researchers proposed that the fully functioning frontal lobes are necessary for a spatial memory. In order to test this hypothesis, water-deprived rats were trained to run through a complex maze in order to receive access to the water. Run through the, oops. Hello. Okay. So they were running through the complex maze in order to receive access to the water. After 20 days of training, 5 of the 10 animals were anesthetized and underwent a surgical procedure, which involves boring a hole in the skull, so making a lesion, right, in their skull, and making a small lesion in both frontal lobes. The next day, following 12 hours of water deprivation, all 10 rats were tested. Results showed that the time to reach the end of the maze was about 5 times greater for rats with frontal lobes lesions. So it has to do with, so time to reach the end of the maze, it's going to be our dependent variable, right? And the lesions, whether it's small or big, it's going to be our independent variable. So they want to see by the lesions that they're making, by the hole that they're making in the frontal lobes, if it's going to affect the time that each rat is going to reach the end of the maze. So the lesion is something that we're changing. It's going to be our independent variable, and the time to run through the complex maze is going to be our dependent variable. Okay. So that's what I wanted to cover for this session. And I will be recording this meeting, and I will post it on to the Canvas. If you have any questions, you can ask me now, or you can always email me. I'll try to respond fast within a few hours for the next 2 days. So if you have any questions on the exam, if you're confused about anything, about how to take the exam, or any questions that you have, you can always email me, or you can ask me now. And again, you can find a recorded video of our Zoom meeting right now onto the Canvas in a few hours. I'll be posted onto the campus. Yep. So let's see, what time is it? Okay. Do you guys have any questions? So again, make sure you study, make sure that you do the test questions on the inquisitives. They help a lot. Don't be afraid to go over the limits, because I know that you can do more questions on the inquisitives. So please do so. Get prepared for the exams. Again, the exam is 50 questions, about 50 questions, multiple choice. The link is going to be sent to you, or you can find it onto the Canvas. You have to start at 11 a.m. Don't be late. So it's like you're actually taking a new class. You have about 1 hour, 20 minutes for, or 50 minutes. I'm not sure how, I'm not really sure about that. Your class time, I think 50 minutes. You have 50 minutes for the exams. And once you're done, you're just going to submit it and everything's going to be taken care of. And make sure to study chapter 2 very well on the book. Also, Dr. Bergs added chapter 2.22. Make sure you study that. There are some specific questions coming out of that specific chapter, a specific section. So make sure you add that to your reading list as well. If you haven't started reading yet, I would start with inquisitives. And for the questions that you think you're really lost and you don't understand it, go back to the book and read those material. Okay. Is there any questions before I sign off? Any problem, any concern, any comments? Make sure that you do understand this independent and dependent variable. They are important to know. There will be some questions on the test form. And okay. Okay, guys. All right. Have a good one. Take care. Let me know if there was any problem. And good luck on your test. See you next week. Bye. I'll be signing off now.